a luxury jewelry boutique, a seemingly ordinary day. But behind the sparkling showcases, something dark is happening. A customer walks in, expecting kindness, but what she gets is far from it. What happens when the owner himself decides to see the truth with his own eyes? Stay until the end to witness a moment of justice you won't forget. If you believe in fairness, hit the like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. Jackie Chan sat in his private office, located in a high-rise building overlooking the bustling city. His desk was cluttered with scripts, business proposals, and a steaming cup of green tea. He had just finished a meeting regarding his upcoming projects when his assistant, David, entered with a concerned expression. David placed a neatly organized file on the desk and cleared his throat before speaking. "Sir, I think you need to see this," David said. Jackie glanced up, curious. He reached for the folder and flipped it open. Inside, he found several printed emails, customer reviews, and even screenshots from social media platforms. As he skimmed through the pages, his expression darkened. Reports of mistreatment in his own jewelry boutique, Chan's Jewels, were scattered across the documents. Some were complaints about rude service, others mentioned employees treating lower-income customers poorly. But what caught Jackie's attention the most were the repeated mentions of discrimination against elderly and Asian customers. One review stood out. "I went to Chan's Jewels to buy something special for my granddaughter's birthday, but the staff treated me like I didn't belong. The blonde woman at the counter looked me up and down and told me to leave if I couldn't afford anything. I was humiliated. I walked out in shame." I thought Jackie Chan stood for respect and kindness, but apparently his store doesn't. Jackie put down the paper and leaned back in his chair. A heavy silence filled the room. "Who's responsible for this?" he finally asked. David hesitated. "There's a name that keeps coming up in the complaints. The store's senior sales manager. Her name is Amanda. She's been working there for over 6 years. People say she has a habit of looking down on customers she thinks are beneath her." Jackie exhaled sharply. He had always prided himself on running businesses that upheld his values: respect, fairness, and kindness. Yet, his own store had become a place where people were mistreated. "I want to see this for myself," Jackie said, standing up. David blinked. "You mean you're going there in person?" Jackie nodded. "Yes, but not as Jackie Chan." A plan was already forming in his mind. He needed to see the truth with his own eyes, and he couldn't do that as a celebrity. An hour later, Jackie was dressed in plain jeans, a simple hoodie, and a pair of old sneakers. He pulled a medical mask over his face, covering most of his features. With this disguise, he looked like any other regular man walking the streets of the city. The sun was setting as he arrived at Chan's Jewels. The store was located in an upscale district, its large glass windows showcasing sparkling displays of diamonds, rubies, and emeralds. The golden logo of his name glowed under the evening lights, but tonight Jackie didn't feel proud looking at it. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The boutique had a luxurious atmosphere. The marble floors gleamed under bright chandeliers, and soft, classical music played in the background. Staff members in elegant suits moved gracefully behind the counters, attending to wealthy customers who browsed the collections. Jackie kept his head down, moving slowly, pretending to examine the displays. He needed to observe, to listen. Then the entrance doors opened, and an elderly Asian woman walked in. She was in her late 70s, dressed modestly in a dark coat and simple shoes. Her small hands clutched a worn leather purse as she took in the beauty of the store with bright, eager eyes. Jackie turned his attention to her, curious to see how the staff would treat her. It didn't take long before he overheard the conversation that made his blood boil. From behind the counter, two saleswomen whispered to each other, their laughter low but sharp. "Look at that," one of them murmured, barely containing her amusement. "Another one of those old, cheap Asians. They always come in thinking they belong here." The second woman scoffed. "Probably wants to touch everything but won't buy a single thing. Typical." Jackie's fists clenched in his pockets, but the worst was yet to come. The elderly woman slowly approached the main counter, where Amanda, the blonde sales manager, stood with her arms crossed. Amanda looked the old woman up and down with undisguised contempt. "Excuse me, dear," the elderly woman said kindly. "I'd like to buy a gift for my granddaughter's birthday. Could you recommend something special?" Amanda plastered on a fake smile. "Of course," she said smoothly, turning to the display case. She reached inside and took out a delicate diamond bracelet, setting it on the counter with a practiced flourish. "This one is perfect," she said. $12,000. The elderly woman's smile faltered. "12,000?" she echoed softly. "Oh, that's quite a lot." Amanda's expression immediately soured. "If you can't afford it, maybe you should try shopping somewhere more within your budget," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Perhaps a flea market or a souvenir shop." A few customers glanced over at the commotion, but no one said anything. Jackie felt his stomach turn as he watched the humiliation unfold. The elderly woman's face reddened in embarrassment. She clutched her purse tighter, swallowing hard. I just wanted something nice for my granddaughter," she murmured, voice trembling. Amanda laughed, shaking her head. "Well, if you don't have the money, maybe you shouldn't be wasting our time." Jackie had heard enough. As the elderly woman turned away, humiliated, she slowly made her way toward the exit. But just as she reached the door, Jackie moved forward and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Please, wait," he said in a quiet but firm voice. She looked up at him, surprised. Jackie turned back toward the counter, his eyes burning with determination. He reached up, grabbed the edge of his mask, and slowly pulled it down, revealing his face. Amanda, still standing smugly behind the counter, froze completely. Her eyes widened in horror. "Jackie? Chan?" The entire store went silent. Jackie met her shocked gaze, his voice calm but filled with controlled fury. "I saw everything," he said. "And now we're going to talk." The silence in the boutique was deafening. Amanda stood frozen behind the counter, her face drained of color as she stared at Jackie Chan, now fully recognizable without his mask. The other employees exchanged nervous glances, and even the customers, some of whom had been quietly watching the scene unfold, now shifted their attention entirely to him. Jackie held his gaze on Amanda, his expression calm but unreadable. The elderly woman, still standing beside him, looked between him and the staff, confusion flickering in her gentle eyes. Jackie had seen many things in his life. He had faced injustice in films, played heroes who fought against corruption, but nothing compared to the disappointment he felt knowing that this was happening in a store that bore his name. Amanda swallowed hard, her posture stiff. Mr. Chan? I didn't realize—" Jackie held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. His voice was controlled, but there was an unmistakable edge of steel behind it. "You didn't realize who I was, or you didn't realize you were being watched?" Amanda hesitated, clearly unsure of how to respond. The nervous energy in the room was palpable. Some customers, who had pretended not to notice the earlier incident, now whispered among themselves, likely realizing that they had just witnessed something that could go viral. Jackie took a slow step forward, his gaze unwavering. "How much is the bracelet?" he asked, his voice steady. Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it again. She licked her lips, her hands tightening around the edges of the counter. $1,500, she finally said, her voice slightly shaky. Jackie's eyes narrowed slightly. 1,500? He let the number linger in the air, his tone making it clear that he wasn't asking out of curiosity. Amanda quickly nodded. "Yes, sir. That's the correct price." Jackie turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "That's interesting, because just a few minutes ago you told this woman it was $12,000. A ripple of tension spread across the room. Amanda visibly flinched. Her breathing grew uneven, and her fingers tapped nervously against the polished surface of the glass counter. She began, scrambling for an excuse. Jackie didn't let her finish. His voice was quieter this time, but somehow it felt even heavier. "You lied to her." Amanda blinked rapidly, her mouth opening and closing. "You judged her," Jackie continued, his gaze never leaving her. "You looked at her and decided she wasn't worth your respect. You mocked her, humiliated her, and for what? Because she doesn't look like the customers you want in this store?" Amanda swallowed. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Chan, I apologize." The word cut through the air like a blade. Amanda visibly tensed. Jackie's voice remained calm, but there was no room for negotiation. "You will apologize to her right now, loud enough for everyone in this store to hear." Amanda's jaw tightened. Her pride fought against the demand, but the weight of Jackie's authority pressed down on her. She glanced around, realizing that all eyes were on her. She turned stiffly toward the elderly woman who still stood quietly beside Jackie, her hands clasped together, her shoulders slightly hunched from years of life's burdens. Amanda's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Jackie's expression didn't change. "Louder!" Amanda clenched her fists. Her face was burning red now, a mixture of shame and resentment swirling in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said again, this time louder. Jackie didn't blink. "What are you sorry for?" Amanda's breathing grew erratic. Her fingers dug into the counter. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way," she mumbled, not even looking at the elderly woman. Jackie tilted his head slightly. "Try again." Amanda sucked in a sharp breath, her entire body rigid. "I'm sorry for treating you disrespectfully," she forced out through gritted teeth. "It was wrong." Jackie finally nodded, but he wasn't done. "And now you're going to do something else." Amanda looked at him warily, as if bracing for impact. "You're going to leave," Jackie said simply. A murmur swept through the store. Amanda's eyes widened. "Wait, you're fired," Jackie continued, his voice unwavering. "You don't represent me, my business, or my values. You will pack up your things, return your employee badge, and you will leave this store immediately." Amanda's breath hitched. "Mr. Chan, please, Jackie remained unmoved. "This is not up for discussion. Your actions are unacceptable. I will not have someone like you in my store." Amanda opened her mouth and snapped it shut. She looked at the other employees, but none of them came to her defense. She looked at the customers, but they only stared back at her with judgmental eyes. Realization dawned. She had no allies. No one was going to save her. With shaking hands, she reached up and unclipped her name badge, slamming it onto the counter with more force than necessary. Her chest rose and fell in rapid succession as she swallowed back her anger. She spun on her heel and stormed toward the staff area, disappearing behind the back door. For a long moment, the store was silent again. Jackie finally turned back to the elderly woman, his expression softening. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," he said gently. She shook her head quickly. "It wasn't your fault." Jackie smiled warmly. "Still, no one should be treated that way, and I'd like to make it up to you." Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh no, you don't have to." Jackie gestured toward the display. "Please, choose any piece of jewelry you'd like. It's my gift to you." The woman gasped softly. Her lips trembled. "Oh, no, no, that's too much. I couldn't possibly—" Jackie chuckled. "You can, and you will. Your granddaughter deserves something special, doesn't she?" Her eyes filled with emotion. She's always wanted a bracelet like that," she admitted hesitantly. Jackie reached for the original bracelet that Amanda had tried to overcharge her for. He carefully picked it up and placed it in a velvet box. "Then this is for her," he said, handing it to the woman. She took it with shaking hands. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Jackie nodded. "You're very welcome." Somewhere in the store, a customer began clapping. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire boutique erupted into applause. Jackie glanced around, slightly taken aback by the reaction. Employees smiled at him in relief. Customers gave him approving nods. Some even pulled out their phones, capturing the moment. Jackie knew what would happen next. The incident would spread. The world would see it. But he didn't mind. Some lessons deserved to be taught in public. And justice had been served today. The echo of applause slowly faded, replaced by a hushed murmur that filled the boutique. Some customers lingered near the jewelry displays, still watching Jackie with admiration, while others whispered amongst themselves about what had just happened. The tension that had once suffocated the store had lifted, replaced by an air of respect and silent approval. Employees straightened their posture, now keenly aware that their boss was standing in their midst, observing everything. Jackie turned back to the elderly woman who still clutched the velvet box in her trembling hands. She was staring down at it, as if afraid it might disappear at any moment. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Jackie could see the raw emotion on her face, gratitude, disbelief, and perhaps even a trace of lingering embarrassment from what she had endured only minutes ago. "You don't have to feel bad," Jackie said gently. "You did nothing wrong." The woman exhaled slowly, her eyes still glistening. "I never expected this." Jackie smiled warmly. "Neither did I." She finally looked up at him, studying his face as if trying to make sense of the situation. "Why would you do this for me?" Jackie's expression softened. "Because respect isn't something that should be given only to those who look wealthy. It should be given to everyone." The elderly woman blinked a few times before nodding slowly. "I wish more people thought like you." Jackie sighed, shoving his hands into his pockets. "So do I." Before he could say anything else, a timid voice interrupted. "Mr. Chan?" Jackie turned to see a younger employee standing near the register. She looked nervous, her fingers fidgeting at the hem of her blazer. She was likely in her early 20s, her name tag reading Sophie. Jackie recognized her from the employee records, but had never spoken to her before. "Yes," Jackie said, tilting his head slightly. Sophie hesitated, glancing toward the door where Amanda had disappeared only moments ago. I I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry about what happened, and I think it was the right thing to do." Jackie studied her for a moment. "You work here, don't you?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, sir, for about a year now." Jackie crossed his arms. "Have you seen Amanda treat other customers like this before?" Sophie hesitated, but the answer was already clear. She swallowed, then nodded. "Yes." Jackie narrowed his eyes slightly. "And no one reported it?" Sophie lowered her gaze. She was a senior sales manager. She had connections. She always said that if we complained, she'd make sure we regretted it." Jackie clenched his jaw slightly, anger flickering in his chest. He had no idea that such toxic behavior had been thriving under his own name, under the business he had built with values of respect and kindness. "You're not afraid to speak now," he noted. Sophie straightened her shoulders slightly, though her hands were still shaking. "Because you're here," she admitted. "Because I know you actually care." Jackie sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I should have been here sooner." Sophie shook her head. "You trust people to do the right thing. That's not a bad thing. But some people don't deserve that trust." Jackie nodded slowly. He glanced around the store, noticing how some of the employees seemed visibly relieved, as if Amanda's departure had lifted a weight from their shoulders. He turned back to Sophie. "Are there any other employees who've mistreated customers like she did?" Sophie quickly shook her head. "No, sir. She was the worst. Some of the others laughed at her jokes, but I don't think they realized how wrong it was. They were just scared of her." Jackie sighed again. "Scared employees don't create a welcoming store." Sophie bit her lip. "No, sir." Jackie glanced around the boutique again, then back at Sophie. He had to make sure this never happened again, that no one would walk into his store only to be humiliated. "I'll be making some changes," Jackie finally said. "Starting today." Sophie nodded, looking both nervous and hopeful at the same time. Jackie turned to the rest of the staff who had been lingering nearby, listening. "Everyone gather around," he instructed. They hesitated for a moment, then slowly stepped closer, forming a loose semicircle. Some of them shifted uncomfortably, clearly uncertain about what was about to happen. Jackie let the silence settle before he spoke. "I built this store because I wanted people to have a place where they could find something beautiful, something that made them happy," he said. "But jewelry is not just about gold and diamonds. It's about memories. It's about moments. And that means every customer who walks through those doors deserves to be treated with respect, no matter what they look like, no matter how much money they have." The employees nodded slowly. Some looked guilty, others simply thoughtful. Jackie continued. "What happened today should have never happened, and it won't happen again. From this moment forward, I'm implementing new policies, one of them being that any form of discrimination or disrespect toward a customer will not be tolerated." One of the older employees, a man in his 40s, raised his hand slightly. "Will there be new training?" Jackie nodded. "Yes. Everyone here will go through customer service training that emphasizes kindness and respect, and I will personally make sure that these values are followed." A murmur went through the group. Some of the employees looked relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to finally step in and change things. Jackie glanced back at Sophie. "How would you feel about a promotion?" Sophie blinked in shock. "What?" Jackie smiled slightly. "You stood up for what's right, even when it wasn't easy. That's the kind of leadership I want in my store. You're the new sales manager." Sophie's mouth dropped open slightly. I don't know what to say." Jackie chuckled. "Say yes. Sophie swallowed hard, then slowly nodded. Yes. Jackie nodded in approval. Good. He then turned back to the elderly woman who had been quietly watching the entire exchange. I don't just want to fix things inside this store, Jackie told her. I want to make sure people like you, people who come in here looking for something special, are treated the way they deserve to be treated. The woman smiled softly. That's a beautiful thought, young man. Jackie grinned. Young, you flatter me. She chuckled, shaking her head. Well, you still have the heart of someone young. Jackie's expression turned thoughtful. Then let me use it to make a difference. The elderly woman reached out and gently patted his hand. You already have. Jackie exhaled, feeling the tension that had been sitting in his chest begin to ease. He had come here expecting to witness the truth, but he hadn't expected to make changes on the spot. Yet, looking around, seeing the subtle shifts in the atmosphere, the new energy in the employees, he knew he had done the right thing. There was still more to do, but today, at least, was a start. The atmosphere in the store had shifted. Where there had once been tension and fear, there was now a quiet sense of relief. The employees stood in small clusters, whispering among themselves about everything that had just unfolded. Customers who had lingered behind continued murmuring in hushed tones, some still discreetly recording with their phones. Jackie was aware that what had happened today would likely make its way to social media, but he didn't mind. Some lessons were meant to be seen. The elderly woman, still holding the velvet box in her hands, looked up at Jackie with warm eyes. She had been silent for a while, simply taking everything in, as if still processing what had just occurred. Jackie gave her a reassuring smile, silently encouraging her to speak her mind. I never expected someone like you to be here, she admitted finally, let alone to step in the way you did. Jackie's smile softened. Neither did Amanda. The old woman chuckled, her laughter light but full of understanding. I suppose not. She glanced down at the jewelry box again, her fingers running over its soft surface. I really don't know how to thank you. Jackie shook his head. You don't have to. She exhaled, eyes misty, then looked up at him again. You remind me of my husband, she said. He always believed that kindness was the most important thing a person could give. He passed away a few years ago, but if he had seen what you did today, he would have been proud. Jackie's chest tightened slightly. He placed a gentle hand over his heart and gave a small bow. Then, I hope I've honored him. She nodded, swallowing hard before reaching out and squeezing his hand in gratitude. Before Jackie could say anything else, a movement caught his eye. One of the employees, an older man named Harold, who had been working at the store for nearly a decade, stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He was someone Jackie remembered seeing in reports as one of the most dedicated salesmen in the store, but today there was something hesitant in his demeanor. Mr. Chan, Harold began, his voice steady but cautious. I just wanted to say. He paused as if searching for the right words. I should have spoken up a long time ago. Jackie studied him, noting the way his fingers twitched at his sides. You saw what Amanda was doing, didn't you? Harold nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. I did, but I never said anything. He looked down, letting out a slow breath. It wasn't that I agreed with her. I thought that if I kept my head down, if I just did my job, it wasn't my problem. He clenched his fists. But watching what happened today made me realize that doing nothing made me just as guilty. Jackie didn't speak right away. He let the weight of Harold's words settle between them before responding. "It's not too late to do the right thing," Jackie finally said, "but it has to start now." Harold looked up, his shoulders squaring. "Then consider this me starting now." He turned toward the elderly woman and bowed deeply. "I'm so sorry for not stepping in sooner." The old woman's eyes widened, clearly caught off guard by the gesture, but then she smiled, her lips curving in quiet understanding. "You're a good man for admitting it." Harold straightened, nodding firmly. Jackie could see that something in him had shifted, and he hoped that this moment would mark the beginning of a different approach for him moving forward. Another voice spoke up, this time from the side. "I think we all should have done more," a younger female employee admitted. "Amanda, she made us feel like we couldn't say anything, but that doesn't excuse it." A few other employees nodded in agreement, their expressions solemn. It was clear that the toxic atmosphere Amanda had created had affected more than just the customers. It had poisoned the entire work environment. Jackie let his gaze sweep over the group, his mind already formulating a plan for how to ensure this never happened again. "I'm not going to pretend this can all be fixed in one day," Jackie said finally. "But what I will say is that from now on, this store will be different." The employees straightened, waiting for his next words. No more fear, no more looking the other way when someone is being mistreated. If you see something wrong, you speak up. If you feel something is unfair, you report it. I will personally ensure that there are no repercussions for doing what is right. He could see the hope flicker across their faces, the realization that things were truly changing. Jackie then turned his attention to the elderly woman once more. "Before you go, I'd like to ask you something." She blinked up at him. "Yes?" Jackie gestured toward the store. "This place is supposed to be for everyone. But today, you walked in and were made to feel like you didn't belong." He crossed his arms. "What would make this store feel like a place where someone like you, someone looking for something special, feels truly welcome?" The woman tilted her head, thoughtful. "Well," she glanced around at the employees, then at the customers who were still present. "It's not about the jewelry. It's about the way people are treated." Jackie nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Maybe," she said slowly, "if there were something that let people know they would be treated with kindness the moment they walked in, it would help." Jackie considered this. His mind raced through possibilities. Then an idea began to take shape. "What if we created a special day?" he suggested. "A day where older customers, elders in our community, are welcomed with personal attention, a warm drink, maybe even a small gift." The elderly woman's face lit up. "Oh, that would be wonderful." Jackie glanced at his employees. "What do you all think?" Sophie, the newly promoted manager, nodded eagerly. "I think it's a beautiful idea, sir." Harold, who had remained quiet after his earlier admission, finally spoke up again. "I'd like to help organize it." Jackie smiled. "Then let's make it happen." The elderly woman beamed, and for the first time that evening, the store truly felt like it had transformed. Not just because Amanda was gone, but because a shift had taken place, one that would ensure no one else ever walked in and felt unworthy again. Jackie turned back to the woman and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your granddaughter is going to love her gift." Tears shimmered in the old woman's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Jackie nodded. "It was my honor." The employees, the customers, the very air inside the store, everything felt different now. And Jackie knew without a doubt that today wasn't just about punishing one person's wrongdoing. It was about setting a new standard for what respect, dignity, and kindness truly meant. The store had quieted down, but the weight of what had happened still lingered in the air. Jackie stood in the center of the boutique, taking in the changed atmosphere. Employees seemed more alert, more aware of their actions, as if they finally understood the responsibility that came with representing his name. Customers, some of whom had been silent witnesses to the earlier events, continued to whisper among themselves, their eyes darting toward him every now and then. Jackie knew that what had transpired would not be forgotten any time soon. Amanda had been removed, justice had been served, but there was still one final thing left to address. He had to ensure that this moment wouldn't just be a spectacle, but a lesson, one that would carry on long after he left. He turned to Sophie, who was still standing nearby, gripping the edges of her blazer as if trying to ground herself. She had accepted the promotion, but the weight of responsibility was clearly setting in. Jackie gave her an encouraging nod before looking toward the rest of the staff. "I need everyone's attention," he said, his voice calm but firm. The employees immediately straightened, shifting their focus to him. Some looked nervous, others relieved, but all of them knew that whatever he was about to say would matter. "What happened today cannot be undone," Jackie began, his gaze moving from one employee to the next. "But what we can control is what happens from now on. This store has my name on it. That means every person who walks through those doors should be treated with the same level of respect and kindness. No exceptions." A few employees nodded, some still hesitant, but listening intently. Jackie continued, "I know that Amanda was not the only problem here. I saw the way some of you hesitated. I saw the way others stood back and watched while she disrespected a customer. I understand fear. I understand hierarchy. But I will not accept silence when it comes to treating people with dignity." He let his words sink in before speaking again. "From this moment forward, I'm implementing not new rules for how this store is run. The first rule, any form of discrimination, racism, or mistreatment of customers will result in immediate termination. If anyone thinks that this job gives them the right to look down on others, this is your chance to leave." A heavy silence followed. No one moved. No one even looked at the door. Jackie nodded. "Good, then let's continue. The second rule, training. Every employee will go through customer service training focused on respect and inclusivity. You will learn how to treat every person who walks in here with the dignity they deserve." A murmur spread through the employees, but Jackie held up a hand, silencing them. "The third rule, accountability. If you witness a fellow employee mistreating a customer, you speak up. No more looking the other way. If you're afraid to report something, you come directly to Sophie or me. And let me make this clear. There will be no punishment for standing up for what's right." Sophie straightened at his words, looking determined despite the weight of responsibility now resting on her shoulders. Jackie turned to her. "You are the new sales manager," he reminded her. "That means you set the tone for how this store is run. Do you understand what that means?" Sophie swallowed hard but nodded. "Yes, sir. It means that I lead by example, that I make sure this store reflects the values you stand for." Jackie smiled slightly. "Good answer." Harold, the older employee who had admitted his regret earlier, suddenly cleared his throat. "Mr. Chan?" Jackie turned his attention to him. "Yes?" Harold hesitated for only a second before speaking. I think it's important that we make it up to our customers, the ones we failed, Not just this lady, but anyone who ever walked in here and was treated unfairly. Jackie studied him, then slowly nodded. You're absolutely right. He glanced at Sophie. How do you feel about that? Sophie straightened. I think we should do something, a way to show that this store is different now. Jackie turned his gaze to the rest of the employees. Suggestions? There was a pause, then one of the younger sales associates, a woman named Lisa, spoke up. What if we had a customer appreciation event? Something special, where we invite people who may have been mistreated before and show them we're better now. Jackie considered the idea. I like that, but it can't just be for show, it has to mean something. The elderly woman, who had been standing quietly this entire time, finally spoke up. What if you offered something small but meaningful to your customers? Something that reminds them that they're welcome here. Jackie nodded thoughtfully, like a small token of appreciation. She smiled. Exactly. Jackie turned to Sophie. You'll be in charge of organizing this event. Work with Harold, Lisa, and anyone else willing to help. Make it something real. Something that shows people that this place is truly changing. Sophie nodded, looking determined. I'll make sure of it. Jackie turned back to the elderly woman. Would you be willing to come back when we do this? She blinked in surprise. You want me to come? Jackie smiled warmly. You were the one mistreated today, but I want you to see that things will be different. You and anyone else who was ever made to feel unwelcome here. The old woman's eyes softened, and after a moment she nodded. I'd like that. Jackie exhaled, feeling a sense of satisfaction settle in his chest. Today had been about more than just correcting one person's mistake. It was about setting a new standard, not just for his store, but for everyone working there. As the employees began murmuring among themselves, already discussing plans for the upcoming event, Jackie finally allowed himself to step back. He looked at the store, the gleaming jewelry, the glass cases, the polished floors, and realized that for the first time in a long time, it finally felt like a place worthy of his name. Justice had been served. But more importantly, change had begun. The sun had fully set by the time Jackie finally stepped outside of the boutique, the cool night air brushing against his skin as he took a deep breath. The neon lights from nearby stores reflected off the pavement, and the streets bustled with life as people moved from shop to shop, unaware of the transformation that had just taken place inside Chan's Jewels. Jackie knew that the story of what had happened today would spread. Videos had already been recorded, whispers had already begun, but that was exactly what needed to happen. He glanced back through the glass doors, watching as Sophie, Harold, and the rest of the employees continued speaking in hushed but excited tones. The atmosphere was no longer filled with fear or silence. It had shifted into something hopeful. The boutique was changing, and for the first time, Jackie truly felt like it belonged to him again. A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. Leaving so soon? Jackie turned to see the elderly woman standing beside him, her small frame barely reaching his shoulder. She still held the velvet jewelry box tightly in her hands, as if it were a delicate treasure. The warm glow from a nearby streetlight illuminated her face, making the faint lines of age and wisdom stand out even more. Jackie smiled. For now. She studied him for a moment before nodding. You've done something good here tonight. Jackie exhaled. I hope so, but there's still a lot to fix. She let out a soft chuckle. There will always be more to fix, young man. That's life. But today, you made a difference. For me. For them. She motioned towards the boutique behind them. And for yourself. Jackie's expression softened. Maybe. The woman glanced down at the bracelet he had given her. "You know, I didn't come here expecting to buy something expensive. I just wanted to find something small, something meaningful for my granddaughter." Jackie tilted his head slightly. "And why this bracelet?" A wistful smile touched her lips. "Because it looks like the one her mother used to wear." Jackie felt his chest tighten slightly. "Her mother?" The woman nodded slowly. "My daughter. She passed away a few years ago." She sighed, her fingers gently tracing the edges of the velvet box. "I raised my granddaughter on my own after that. She's a strong girl, but she misses her mother every day. I wanted her to have something that reminded her of her." Jackie remained silent for a moment, letting her words settle. "I was saving up for something nice," she continued, "but when that woman, Amanda, spoke to me the way she did, I almost believed her. I almost believed that I didn't belong in a place like this, that I was foolish to think I could give my granddaughter something beautiful." Jackie clenched his jaw, anger flickering in his chest again at the memory of Amanda's words. He looked at the old woman and shook his head. "You belong wherever you want to be, and you deserve to give your granddaughter whatever you want to give her." She smiled softly. "You're a good man, Jackie Chan." Jackie chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I try." She reached up and patted his arm lightly. "You do more than try." Jackie took a slow breath, looking out at the city around him. The world was full of injustices, some small, some enormous, but today he had been able to fix at least one of them, and if that meant that one young girl would receive a birthday gift filled with love and meaning, then it was worth it. "Will you tell her?" Jackie asked after a moment. "About what happened today?" The woman chuckled. "Maybe one day, but for now I'll just tell her that a kind stranger helped her grandmother give her something special." Jackie smiled. "I like that version." The old woman gave him one last warm look before carefully placing the box into her purse. "Good night, Mr. Chan, and thank you." Jackie nodded. "Good night." He watched as she walked away, disappearing into the flow of the city crowd. A part of him wondered about the little girl who would receive the bracelet, about the life she had led without her mother, and he hoped that when she opened her gift, she would feel the love behind it. Jackie took one last look at the boutique, at the people inside, at the future they were about to build. Then, with a deep breath, he turned and walked away into the night, knowing that tonight was just the beginning. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the city as Jackie arrived at the boutique once more, this time without a disguise. The store had only just opened, but a small crowd had already gathered outside. Word had spread overnight about what had happened, and now curious onlookers, journalists, and even a few loyal customers had come to see if the rumors were true. Jackie had expected this. The power of social media was undeniable, and last night's incident had already begun circulating online. People wanted to know if the legendary Jackie Chan had truly fired a racist employee on the spot. Jackie stepped through the glass doors, immediately noticing the difference in the atmosphere. The employees stood straighter, more alert, their movements more purposeful. Sophie, now officially in charge, was given instructions with a newfound confidence. Harold and Lisa were speaking with a few customers, their smiles more genuine than they had been before. The entire boutique felt different, lighter. Jackie approached Sophie, who turned to him with wide eyes. "Good morning, sir," she greeted. Jackie smiled. "Morning. How's everything going?" Sophie let out a breath, glancing around the store. "Honestly, a lot better than I expected. Customers are coming in because they heard what happened. They want to see if things have actually changed. Jackie nodded. And have they? Sophie straightened her shoulders. I think so. We've already started working on the customer appreciation event, just like you suggested. Harold's reaching out to past customers to invite them back, and Lisa's setting up a small area where guests can sit and have tea while they shop. Jackie's smile widened. That's exactly the kind of place I wanted this to be. Sophie hesitated before speaking again. There's something else. A few former employees have been reaching out too, people who left because of Amanda. They're asking if there's a chance they could come back now that she's gone. Jackie raised an eyebrow. Do you think they deserve it? Sophie bit her lip, considering her words. I think some of them do. Some left because they couldn't stand how things were. If they truly want to come back and be part of this change, I think we should give them a chance. Jackie nodded. Then set up interviews, talk to them. If they're sincere, welcome them back. Sophie's eyes lit up. I will. Just then, Harold walked over, looking both nervous and determined. Mr. Chan, I thought you should know, the video from last night is everywhere. People are calling it one of the best moments of real justice they've seen in a long time. Jackie sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I figured it would spread. Harold hesitated before speaking again. There's also something else. Jackie tilted his head. What is it? Harold gestured toward the entrance. She's back. Jackie's expression hardened slightly as he turned toward the glass doors. There, standing just outside, was Amanda. She wasn't wearing her usual expensive suit. Instead, she looked disheveled, her eyes tired, her posture less confident than before. She stood still, hesitating, before finally taking a small step toward the door. The employees tensed. Some exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. Sophie frowned, crossing her arms, clearly displeased at seeing her return. Jackie, however, remained still, watching as Amanda cautiously entered the store. For a long moment, no one spoke. The entire boutique seemed to hold its breath. Amanda finally swallowed hard and looked directly at Jackie. I wanted to talk. Jackie studied her, his expression unreadable. Go on. Amanda shifted her weight from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. I know I can't undo what I did. I know what I said was wrong. I didn't expect it to cost me everything. Jackie's gaze didn't waver. Respect costs nothing. And yet, you couldn't afford to give it. Amanda flinched slightly, lowering her gaze. I lost my job. I lost my reputation. People are harassing me online. My name is everywhere and not in a good way. Sophie scoffed softly from behind Jackie, but he raised a hand to stop her. He wasn't interested in humiliating Amanda further. He simply wanted to understand. And why are you here? Amanda exhaled, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. I don't know. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to try and figure out who I am without this job. I spent years thinking that being in charge made me better than others. That success meant looking down on those who weren't as lucky as me. But now, I don't know anything anymore. Jackie remained silent for a moment. He could see the cracks in her arrogance, the vulnerability. She was trying so hard to hide, but an apology didn't erase what had happened. It didn't undo the pain she had caused. You didn't just lose your job, Jackie finally said. You lost the respect of everyone around you, and that's not something you can win back with words alone. Amanda swallowed hard. I know. Jackie sighed, then spoke carefully. You have a choice, Amanda. You can keep running from what happened. You can keep blaming the world for your mistakes, or you can learn. You can become better, but that's up to you. Amanda looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of mockery or false kindness. She found none. She gave a slow nod, then turned toward the exit. Just before she walked out, she paused. "Thank you for not making this worse than it already is." Jackie didn't respond, and Amanda finally left, disappearing into the busy street. The employees remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Sophie spoke. "Would you ever consider giving her a second chance?" Jackie shook his head. "Not now, maybe not ever. Some things take more than just an apology." Sophie nodded in understanding. "Good." Jackie glanced around the store once more. This was a real ending, not just the removal of a toxic presence, but the rebirth of something better. A place that would no longer tolerate cruelty. A place that truly welcomed all. "All right," Jackie finally said. "Let's get to work." And with that, the store officially moved forward, not just with a new policy, but with a new heart. Justice was served, but the real change is only beginning. Respect should never be a privilege. It should be a given. What do you think about what happened today? Would you have done the same? If you stand for respect and kindness, hit that like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below.